Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today, we're going to try to unpack something that's, I think, utterly crucial to modern life. It's something that kind of underpins everything from that smartphone that's probably either in your hand or in your pocket right now, to the electric vehicles that you see on the road, to even the most advanced defense technology. We're talking about rare earth metals.
It is a fascinating topic, and it's not just about the metals themselves. It's much, much bigger than that. We're talking about geopolitics.
Yeah, exactly. This isn't just going to be some kind of, dry discussion about elements and, mining. We're really going to be talking about, who really holds the power when it comes to these really essential resources. And that's where the insights from, the materials that you sent over have been so valuable, especially that book, Rare Earth Metals, Geopolitics in the Future.
hmm
It really gets to the core question that I think we want to try to, unpack today. And that is, who controls these elements and what are the implications, for the global power balance? Because things are shifting right now. There's a lot going on in the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes rare earth so fascinating. It's this intersection of this kind of, almost invisible element,
Mm-hmm.
but then it has this huge impact on geopolitics.
Yeah. Okay, so when we say rare earth metals, just to get everybody on the same page, it sounds almost mythical. What are we actually talking about here?
Well, it's a group of 17 elements, and I think the key ones to think about here are neodymium, dysprosium, terbium, and yttrium.
Oh, yeah.
And what's interesting is that they're a bit of a misnomer, right? They're called rare earths. They're actually not that rare in the Earth's crust. They're pretty widely distributed.
Oh, okay.
The challenge and where this kind of geopolitical tension comes from is in the extraction and critically the refining.
Okay.
So they often occur in very low concentrations
Mm-hmm.
and they're chemically very similar. So separating them is a real challenge.
Well, it's not just like digging up, a big chunk of gold. It's really like this intricate processing afterward that is the real like bottleneck.
Seriously.
Okay, and why are these particular elements so indispensable in our modern world? What are they actually used in?
Well, they are essential components in a huge array of technologies, high-tech applications. So if you think about, if we take neodymium and dysprosium, for example, those are fundamental in creating really powerful permanent magnets.
Okay.
And those magnets are what drive electric vehicle motors. They're crucial in wind turbines.
Oh, wow.
So, we think about the green energy transition.
Hmm.
They're really at the heart of it.
Really?
But beyond that, you'll also find them in things like the screens in your smartphone, the speakers in your laptop,
Ah.
advanced batteries.
Hmm.
And perhaps less visibly, they're also absolutely vital for defense systems. So things like guidance systems in missiles, powerful magnets in stealth aircraft. They're absolutely essential in all these applications.
Wow. So this is like a hidden, essential ingredient in so much of the technology that we rely on every day. So given how crucial these materials are, the report really kind of finds a light on a few really dominant players in this global supply chain. And I think the biggest one that kind of jumps out is China. Their control is pretty significant.
It is indeed. So currently, China controls an estimated 60 to 70% of the global supply of rare earth metals.
Wow.
And what's really, really striking is how they achieved this dominance. It wasn't accidental.
Huh.
It was the result of decades of strategic investment across the entire supply chain. So they secured mining operations, they developed the refining technologies, and they really, really made a concerted effort to become the global leader in this sector.
And this isn't just about, economic dominance. They've really used this control in a more kind of geopolitical way. And the report mentions a couple of specific examples, that I thought were really interesting.
Absolutely. And those examples really underscore the potential for rare earth to be used as geopolitical tools. So, you mentioned the 2010 incident involving Japan, where China temporarily restricted exports during a territorial dispute.
Right.
And that really sent the message to the world about the fragility of relying on a single supplier for these critical materials.
Wow.
And then, of course, more recently in 2019, as trade tensions with the U.S. escalated, Beijing hinted at the possibility of limiting rare earth exports. So these instances really brought home the strategic leverage that control over these resources can provide.
Yeah. So China's clearly the heavyweight here. What about the United States? I recall reading that the U.S. actually used to be a leading producer of these materials. What kind of shifted?
Yeah, that's right. The U.S. was a a significant producer in the past.
Okay.
But over time, a combination of factors, including environmental regulations, cost pressures, and really the strategic rise of China in this sector, led to a decline in domestic production.
Mm-hmm.
So now the U.S. finds itself in a position of significant dependence on China for its rare earth needs.
Okay.
Having said that, there are initiatives underway aimed at reversing this trend. So, for example, the Mountain Pass mine in California has resumed operations.
Okay, so that sounds like a positive step. Is the U.S. poised to kind of reclaim its former position?
Well, it's a start.
Okay.
But what's crucial to understand here is that while the mining of the raw materials has restarted at Mountain Pass, the refining process, which as we discussed is really the more technically demanding and environmentally sensitive part, still largely relies on China.
Right. Okay.
So the U.S. is taking steps to secure its upstream supply, but reducing that refining dependence is a much more complex and long-term endeavor.
Okay, so that's a real challenge. The report also highlighted Australia as a significant player. How do they fit into this kind of global picture?
So Australia's really important here because it's the largest producer of rare earths outside of China, and that's primarily through the Lynas Corporation.
Okay.
And what's particularly interesting is that they're increasingly collaborating with the U.S. as well as other allied nations who are looking to diversify their supply chains and lessen their reliance on China.
Okay.
So this kind of international cooperation is becoming a key feature of the rare earths landscape.
Okay. And moving on, the report also touched on the roles of Russia and Ukraine, which I thought was quite interesting. What's their significance?
So Russia possesses considerable untapped reserves of rare earths.
Okay.
But the crucial point here is that they currently lack the large-scale infrastructure needed to really extract and process these resources effectively. So while the geological potential is there, they're not a major force in the global supply chain right now.
Okay. And what about Ukraine? What makes their position noteworthy?
So Ukraine, well, while not a major producer right now, does hold some strategically important deposits of rare earth elements. Yeah. And that kind of positions it as a potential future player and therefore a factor in the broader geopolitical competition for these resources.
Okay.
Particularly given the ongoing conflict.
Right.
It raises some really interesting questions about the potential long-term economic implications of these deposits, although the current situation obviously presents some significant challenges to any kind of near-term development.
Yeah, it really puts the conflict that's going on there in a different light, I think. It really highlights how resource competition really extends beyond just the traditional, kind of territorial disputes. And the report really kind of dives into the broader resource implications of this Russia-Ukraine war.
Absolutely. So I think there are a number of ways in which the war is impacting the rare earths landscape. Firstly, the conflict itself directly disrupts any potential for exploration or extraction activities within Ukraine itself. Mm. Secondly, we have this increased demand for advanced weaponry, which is being supplied to Ukraine by NATO countries.
Right.
And that inevitably translates to a higher demand for the specialized rare earths that are essential components in those military technologies.
Right. So there's more demand, there's less supply. That's got to be putting pressure on the whole system.
Absolutely.
And what about the sanctions that have been imposed on Russia by the West? How might those be influencing their role in the rare earth market?
So I think the sanctions could certainly impede Russia's ability to attract the necessary foreign investment and acquire the advanced technologies that are required to really develop its rare earth production capabilities on a significant scale.
Okay.
And this might further incentivize, European nations and others to actively seek alternative sources outside of both China and Russia.
Right. And that kind of naturally leads us to the strengthening ties between Russia and China, which the report also kind of raises. And it suggests, potential collaboration on rare earth projects, which I think is a pretty significant development.
Yeah, that's a really critical point. So facing increasing economic pressure from the West, Russia has been actively deepening its economic partnership with China.
Right.
And this includes the very real possibility of joint ventures in the rare earth sector.
Okay.
And if this collaboration intensifies, it could further solidify China's influence over the global supply and potentially create a really significant block within the rare earth market.
Wow. So the Russia-Ukraine war is really adding this whole other layer of complexity to this already really kind of intricate situation. Now let's turn our attention to kind of another major geopolitical dynamic, the U.S.-China trade war. The report really frames this rare earth issue as a really kind of pivotal aspect of these ongoing tensions.
It absolutely is.
Right.
And the trade war has really kind of thrown into sharp relief the the vulnerabilities inherent in global supply chains,
Right.
particularly for these strategically important materials like rare earths.
Okay.
And as we discussed earlier, the 2010 incident with Japan, that served as a stark warning.
Right.
And then the subsequent hints from Beijing in 2019 about potentially restricting exports to the U.S. during the height of the trade disputes. That really underscored the potential for these resources to be, to be weaponized in international trade.
Wow. Yeah. So given that potential threat, what has been the U.S. response? The report outlines a few key strategies that kind of have been adopted.
Yeah, so the U.S. has been pursuing a multifaceted approach. So revitalizing domestic mining, as we touched on with the Mountain Pass example, is one important component.
Right.
But as we also mentioned, the refining capacity still significantly lags behind. Another vital aspect is forging strategic alliances with partners like the European Union, Australia, Japan,
Okay.
and the overarching goal here is to collectively build more resilient and diversified supply chains, thereby reducing dependence on any single dominant nation.
Right.
And then there's also the element of recycling, right?
Right.
So trying to extract rare earths from discarded electronics and other waste materials.
Right. So how significant a role can that play?
So investing in and advancing efficient rare earth recycling technologies is seen as a crucial pathway to lessen reliance on newly mined materials.
Okay.
It offers a more sustainable approach, and it could potentially alleviate some of the geopolitical pressures over time.
Right.
However, I think it's important to have a realistic perspective.
Yeah.
Large-scale, economically viable rare earth recycling is still in its relatively early stages of development, and current recovery rates are not yet sufficient to drastically alter the primary reliance on mining. So while promising, it's not a complete solution in the near term.
Okay. It sounds like the U.S. is making some real efforts here, but the report also realistically acknowledges that breaking China's long-established dominance is going to be a pretty substantial and long-term undertaking.
It is, and it's going to require significant investment. China's leadership in this sector has been built over decades. It's been through deliberate strategic investment, development of specialized technical expertise, and often through accepting environmental trade-offs that other nations were less willing to make.
Right.
So overcoming that established position will necessitate a sustained commitment, significant financial resources, and really robust international collaboration over an extended period. So looking ahead, the report dives into the future of rare earths and highlights some really key trends that I think are worth noting. It seems that the demand for these materials is only set to increase.
Precisely. The ongoing trajectory of technological advancement points unequivocally towards a growing need for these materials across various sectors.
Okay.
And this need is only going to become more critical. The report emphasizes three key trends that are going to really shape the future of rare earths.
Okay, so let's unpack those a little bit. The first one, the green energy boom. That seems fairly self-explanatory given our earlier discussion about EVs and wind turbines.
It is. The global push towards achieving net zero emissions is going to dramatically escalate demand for rare earths. So electric vehicles, for instance, require significantly larger quantities of rare earth magnets compared to traditional combustion engine vehicles. Similarly, wind turbines, particularly the more efficient direct drive models, rely heavily on these powerful magnets for their operation. And we shouldn't overlook energy storage solutions, things like advanced batteries. They also utilize rare earth elements in some designs. So the transition to a green economy is fundamentally intertwined with the secure and sustainable supply of these materials.
Okay, so the second trend highlighted is technological innovations. What kind of potential game changers are we talking about here?
So this encompasses a number of really exciting possibilities.
Yeah.
We might see breakthroughs in new, more efficient and environmentally benign mining and refining techniques that can make extraction more viable in other parts of the world.
Okay.
There's also ongoing research into accessing unconventional sources, such as mineral deposits on the deep seabed, and even the potential for asteroid mining in the more distant future.
Yeah.
But these are still largely in the realm of research and development.
Right, right.
Any significant advancements in these areas could potentially disrupt the current supply dynamics, but their near-term impact remains uncertain.
Okay. And finally, the report points to geopolitical shifts as a major trend shaping the future. And this really seems to tie together everything we've been talking about.
Exactly. The pursuit of secure and diversified supply chains for these critical materials like rare earths is inherently a geopolitical imperative.
Okay.
Nations are increasingly aware of the economic and security risks associated with relying on a single dominant supplier, and this growing awareness is highly likely to foster new alliances, partnerships, and strategic initiatives aimed at diversifying supply and building more resilient systems. So the competition to secure access to these vital resources will undoubtedly play a significant role in reshaping global power dynamics in the years to come.
So ultimately, it kind of brings us back to that central question that we started with, right? Which countries will kind of hold the cards in the future by controlling the flow of these essential rare earth metals? It definitely feels like we're in the midst of a real global power play here.
Precisely. The control of these seemingly niche materials has profound and far-reaching implications for economic competitiveness, technological leadership, and even fundamental aspects of national security. It's a dynamic and constantly evolving situation, and it will undoubtedly remain a key feature of the global geopolitical landscape.
Well, this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive, I think, into a really critical issue. Just to kind of recap for everyone, I think it's really clear that rare earth metals are absolutely foundational to our modern way of life, and they really sit right at the center of this really complex global power struggle. We've explored how China has established this dominant position in the supply chain, the efforts by other nations to try to diversify their sources, and the significant impact that the major geopolitical events like the Russia-Ukraine war and the U.S.-China trade tensions are having on this whole kind of delicate balance. And looking ahead, it seems like the ever-increasing demand driven by the green energy transition and just rapid technological advancements is only serving to amplify the stakes here.
Indeed. And as we've discussed, it's not simply about the presence of raw materials in the ground.
Right.
It's the intricate and often environmentally sensitive processes of extraction and refining, coupled with the strategic policy decisions made by key nations that really determine the dynamics of this critical market.
So as we bring this deep dive to a close, here's a final thought for everyone to kind of consider, right? Given the essential nature of these resources and the current concentration of control, what are the potential long-term consequences? And not just for, the price of our everyday technology, but really for the very foundations of our technological future and the broader balance of global power. I think that's a question with really, really far-reaching implications. So thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.